great to be here on our first live. We're seeing everybody come in. Thank you for being here. For those of you who are going to watch it later, we're doing our first live to talk about fibromyalgia and relationships. We know that fibromyalgia definitely has an impact on all relationships, not just the romantic ones. Since it is the Valentine's Day weekend, we thought this would be the appropriate weekend to talk relationships. But again, it's going to be all types of relationships. It's even going to be talking about the fact that people with fibromyalgia feel a lot of isolation. And so, not the relationships, but wanting to have more, wanting to have community. And that's what we're so excited about. One aspect of this show is the opportunity for us to build community here. And we are so thrilled that already there's so many people on here. Continue to drop us in the comment where you're from. It's so fun to see the reach that we're having. So just say hello to Suzanne in Ohio and Jolene in Illinois. Hello, Lisa. Astrid from Germany. Thank you for being here. I think there's 6
Nico
hours
from Greece. Hello to Greece.
Yeah, and I see Kelly from Portland, Oregon. Hi, Kelly.
Slovakia, South Wales. This is so exciting. I want to apologize in advance. I clearly am not well. I'm at the end of like 2 weeks of having the flu, so my voice is terrible and unpleasant to listen to. So mostly it will be Sharon's voice that you'll be listening to, I'm hoping. I'll just say hello.
I told her I would do most of the talking. She could not be dissuaded from having this live today. I'm like, are you sure this is the weekend to give it a go? Which is why we were a little short with the time notice on whether we were doing it or not, because we wanted to make sure Ginevra felt up to doing it. So, and we continue to see more names coming in. Hello, Olivia from Portugal and Michelle from Oregon, Chris from Florida.
Nova Scotia. That is really cool. Scotland. Oh, these are many places I would like to visit. We may have to do a world tour.
Yes, we would love to do a world tour. Both Ginevra and I have the travel bug is like our favorite thing. So we share that and share that same love. So someday that would be a dream, is take the Fibro Show on the road. Let us know if you'd like to host the Fibro Show in your hometown.
For sure.
Hello, Diane. So some of you know I have a support and education group that's a part of my nonprofit, the Fibromyalgia Association. Began as a support and education group. So I see a couple people from our support and education group here. And yes, you can join the support and education group online. So that's another way to get some more support. And that is, if you want to know more about that, go to managefibro.org. We also have a page on Facebook, the Fibromyalgia Association.
Thank you, Penny, for your kind words about my book. And Michelle, for your kind words about needing to take my tea. Understood. Will do.
It is really cool, isn't it? Diane saying to see so many people from all around the world. And I think the cool thing, so one of the neat things I got to do, and over my last, now it's going to be 28 years this year that I've been doing this work, is getting to meet people from all over the world. I was a part of a program called Leaders Against Pain, and we trained people like us here on, all of us who have fibromyalgia, learn how to better advocate for ourselves in terms of either policymaking, governmental healthcare, support groups. And I got to meet people from all over the world. And the cool thing is that we're all really in a similar boat. Like it kind of doesn't matter where you're from. There was even a very interesting study. I met a wonderful researcher from Israel, Dr. Dan Maskela. I may have said the name wrong, apologies. But he did a study on the nomadic tribe in Israel and found that the same rates of fibro happen in them as they do our population. So it's just fascinating to know more and to, hear how it affects people all around the world, and that it does affect people.
Yes, every part of the world for sure. And I think we're learning it affects more and more men or I should say that wrong. We're learning more about the men who have been affected by fibro, because we used to think it was so predominantly like women. Now we're like, maybe it's more like 70-30. I've even heard like 60-40. So that is, I think, a really understudied part. And I think at least having communities where men with fibromyalgia could, or male identifying folks could, like, identify, talk to each other, and because there's just different kind of other issues they might run into, and to be able to give support to each other. I think that is a goal.
I do too. And I know, having run the support group all these years, that working with men, I could resonate with them, because when I was first diagnosed and I tried to go to a support group, I was 24, and I was by far the youngest person in the room. I think probably the next youngest person was somewhere in their 50s, and now I'm in my 50s myself. Doesn't feel that old. But at the time, being 24, I didn't feel like I could really relate with people who were so much older than me, and who had already maybe been married and done some of the things that I hadn't gotten to do yet. And so I felt like I couldn't always relate to people who were older than me. So I get that same sense from men who come to the group, that, they're looking for other peers, and certainly they do relate and build great connections with the women in the group. But it is always nice. And even, people from different cultures and things, I've noticed there are differences there on how chronic illnesses are even perceived or talked about, or not talked about, really, can have an impact as well. So today we're going to talk about relationships, and we thought we would start there, and I'm continuing to see more names here. So, and we're going to go through the comments, and we really want today to be interactive. This is our first one again. So if you're joining us late, so glad you're here. Drop where you're from. If you're watching it on replay, still drop where you're from. Let us know what's on your mind. We really want the show to be a place where you can come to for information and for support. So we want to know what's on your mind. We thought today would be a good time to talk about relationships. So
do we want to maybe ask for some questions folks might have around relationships, or do you have some more prepared stuff you wanted to do first? Maybe people could be thinking of their questions and putting it in the comments.
Yeah.
Questions or comments, I guess.
Absolutely. And Sue, yes, the video will be available when the program is over. So I appreciate you asking that. And I'm just going to.
And if you are watching the recorded version, please feel free to leave the same kind of comments below. We'd love to see those. And we will actually, if we have time, I was hoping we could maybe answer a few of kind of previous questions that have come up on our different videos. One that I thought might be interesting was the challenges of dating with fibromyalgia. I think that is a whole different kind of ball of wax compared to challenges negotiating with your significant other, and then with friends. There's all these different ways, different relationships that can be affected. So the one about dating, and then I think the other very common thing that I see people struggle with is not feeling like their significant other understands them, or that it becomes kind of a divide between folks. So I think that's a really big concern for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. And we actually talked about this in our support and education group this past week. And one of the things that we talked about were communication strategies. Often communication is at the heart of some of the problems. Certainly not all of them. I think a large piece is the not understanding the fibromyalgia, and how it impacts not only the person in the family with the fibromyalgia, but also everybody else. It's very confusing. I highly recommend this book. It's called Beyond Chaos. Um, and it's one man's journey alongside his chronically ill wife. And it's a fantastic book about a husband and wife and how they manage fibromyalgia. And they would refer to it as the invisible intruder because it couldn't be seen. And yet it really wreaked havoc on their lives. But it's a very honest look at living with fibromyalgia. And I think for some people who have a partner or, perhaps not even a partner, this could have to do with, parents and adult type children or parents and younger children, siblings. Um, just sometimes having that information from a different source other than your loved one struggling can shed light on the illness in a whole new way. My organization has done a conference for the last 24 years called Fibromyalgia Awareness Day. And we're doing it again. And the show here is a proud partner of Awareness Day. And there's going to be more details coming for that, but it's May 10th and it'll be virtual. That was always a really good opportunity for what we call supporters. So anybody, spouses, siblings, parents, so on, who are loved one of someone with fibro, when they learn from somebody else what's going on, or they even hear another individual with fibromyalgia sharing their life experience, it really made an impact because it wasn't just, oh, my wife keeps saying this, and it kind of sounds a little weird that why could she, go grocery shopping with me, but then the minute we get home, she needs a nap or, whatever. And we struggle with that as people living with it. We don't even understand what's happening to us. One minute we have the energy, we have, a decent feeling, and then the next we don't. And so learning together can be a really great way. And I realize not all relationships are as open or have the opportunity as much as maybe like the marital or partnership relationship would have, or, if you're living at home with a sibling still or with a parent, like when you live together, I think it affords more opportunity to understand a little bit the day by day. But then again, we also know that it doesn't, that sometimes the people we're living with aren't that understanding.
I feel like
Um,
this is where sometimes a healthcare professional can be a little bit helpful, sometimes the right healthcare professional. I know certainly I had patients that would bring their significant other with them to appointments for a couple of reasons. One, because a doctor is talking to them about their illness, sort of validates like, "Hey, this is real." And even I would ask, I'd answer questions from people and the spouse would say, "Is this really real?" Like, "Yes, this is really real." And then I could show them some of the science behind that. If people understand that this is a real illness, even though it's invisible, I have found that at least for some people can be hopeful. Um, of course, you have to have a willing spouse, significant other, and a willing healthcare provider. I'd like to think that this is where my book could possibly be helpful. Maybe if your significant other was even willing to read like the first chapter, just because it's coming from a doctor, I'm talking about the science, that somehow there's still this like, well, it's not real, even though we have solidly proven that it's real. And we have got good data to support that since at least 2002.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. And I clicked on, I was just playing with answering questions later. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ginevra. We
No,
have
it's
this
okay.
comment here on
We're winging it.
first support group in Slovakia. And we have a 19-year-old boy and girl along with a 50 plus year old ladies, and it works well. That's amazing. And there's so much for us to learn. Generationally from one another. So I think it's absolutely the right move to create an atmosphere where people amongst generations, amongst differing sexes, so on, can meet together, and there is a lot of commonality in what we face. So yeah, so I'm so excited to hear that's working well. But Ginevra, I think that was an excellent point about, a doctor can be very helpful, and I've also heard that to that point, I think sometimes they haven't been helpful because maybe you've been one of the folks who've gone to a physician with a loved one and had a really bad experience where the physician said, there's nothing wrong with you. Fibromyalgia isn't real. I mean, these are some of the comments we get from all of you on the show, and I've heard for 27 years. So if that happened to you, and that may be why a significant other is not real, like, understanding and believing of the illness, it would be time to, maybe even show them the show, like this, it's a possibility, sit down for a
Ooh, we
couple
should do
minutes.
a show for like partners. We should do like a whole episode about that. What do you
That
guys
would
think in the comments? Would that be like partners or parents, or I don't know, maybe maybe we could even like interview somebody. So let us know. Put stuff in the comments if you feel like that would be an interesting topic. And also, yes, I like Diane's comment. Buy an extra book. I think that would be excellent. The problem is then trying to get a doctor to read it, right? So that's why like photocopying the last 8 pages, I feel like is a more realistic ask just because of how busy doctors are. But thank you, Diane.
Yeah, and I'm gonna share this one. So, Regina, you're sharing, my father had to see me have a flare up to see it was real. And I do think that's a large part of it, that if people don't really see it, they maybe don't understand it. Certainly, we have some wonderful people in our lives who maybe are super empathetic and don't need to see it. But I think for some, they need to see it, and they need to see how it's impacting you, and they need to know. Like, I bet a lot of these people know you really well and know that you'd like to be doing whatever, playing with the grandkids or going to your kids' sporting event. They know you don't want to be at home sitting on the couch, or sitting there with ice packs or heating pads or whatever it might be.
And
So
Lisa brings up a good point. Hello, Lisa. Educating friends, dealing with friends. And I have found that has been really challenging because I have to cancel a lot more on friends than people that are healthy. And I will say that there are some friends of mine that understand that and get it, and we remain friends. And then there's definitely people that I've lost, like coworkers that I've lost when they're like, "Hey, let's go out for drinks after work." And I was like, I just don't have the energy, and they take it personally, right? And I'm like, but I don't want to have to go into the whole spoon theory, and like even as a doctor, like some fellow doctors don't understand that I have limited energy. So I think the friendship piece can also be really challenging, and trying to like maintain friendships even when maybe you can't be as consistent with going out. I have found doing Zoom calls. I definitely have a couple of girlfriends that like we do regular Zoom calls where we just are having tea and talking to each other from our living rooms, because that's like way more realistic than like meeting somewhere for tea. So
And like us, you start to meet people from all around the world, and you don't live near each other. And so you can still find that opportunity to get together, which brings me to the second point that we were going to talk about, was the isolation, the other side of things, where it's not even really the other side. It's also sadly connected to the relationship thing, where we do feel that, maybe you were very athletic and you used to like hike with friends or ride your bike with friends. And now you're finding you can't do that. And so, and you're finding yourself in your life feeling smaller because you're not doing the things you used to do. And so it's really important to not let your life get so small, to find ways to grow it again, and to do things that bring you joy, that connect you with people. And yes, it can be a lot to navigate when you're feeling the loss of, but boy, I really loved hiking and I loved doing those things. And perhaps there's a way back to doing some of that, but in the meantime, it's important to keep those connections going. So, what's something you can do? I mean, maybe, like Geneva's saying, she doesn't have the energy possibly to go out on the weekend after working all week. So, she like, hey, let's have tea over Zoom, and then we can still meet that way. Um, Is it, joining a class, maybe a little online class? There's some that aren't super expensive. There are free things that you can do. Um, there are, like, groups at the library. A lot of us still have the libraries, near us, and you can reach out
Don't you
that
have
way.
a once a month support group that's online that
Or
people
you
can
can
join? I'm just saying.
We do. It's second Monday of most months at 7 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. And again, just go to managefibro.org, drop us a subscribe on managefibro.org, and then you'll start getting all the information on our support and education group meetings. Yeah, and I'm seeing and hear a couple of folks who are saying the same thing like Bill here, that the canceling is a big challenge. And yeah, there's a lot of pressure on that. And then we have this sadness about, just having to cancel because we're looking forward to doing whatever it is. But then we have this sort of pressure on us that we're maybe letting somebody else down. So, how can we address some of those things? And we'd love to hear from you how you're addressing how you cancel things. So, I'm going to give you guys a minute to maybe share how you work around the canceling of things, or ways that maybe you kind of position whatever you're doing in such a way that maybe makes canceling a little easier for you, a little less stressful. For me, as a mom, my kids are grown now. They're young adults. But one thing I learned early on was to not tell my kids about plans. It was all very last
Surprise.
minute. I would just be constantly surprising them with, like, "Hey, guess what? We're going to the zoo. Get ready. We're leaving in 5 minutes," instead of like telling them in days in advance, because it was heartbreaking when they're so little, to see their faces, with the disappointment and everything. And maybe that's an approach you can even translate to friendships and different things, where you take more of a chance of, making last minute plans, as opposed.
And again, this is where some kind of metaphor can be helpful. We're going to do either a separate live or a different show that kind of dives more into the spoon theory and the multiple other options for the spoon theory. So we mentioned it in a couple of our first videos, and then we had some really interesting comments where people talked about all the different analogies that actually worked better for them. One that was like sort of a battery drainage, like, hey, I'm a cell phone that has 17% charge today. That's what I got. What was the other one? There was like somebody said they had enough construction material to build like a small house versus a large house. So like how much energy they had. And their kids seem to like resonate with that. And whether you're a spoon theory fan or not, I think having some language or some way to explain, hey, there's this unpredictability to my days. And that's the piece that I think can drive us personally and our significant others and our families and our friends kind of bonkers, is because we can't predict it, right? So like I can plan a week in advance, but like I don't know how I'm going to be feeling on that Friday. I mean, I've gotten wiser as I've gotten older. I think Diane said something about like living an every other day life, like trying to schedule rest days in between. I am trying to be more realistic with myself. Like, yeah, I probably should say no to that because, I'm going to be really tired from the week before or from that event. So wisdom and maybe a shared language. I love Ron's idea, like to have their agreement in advance to be flexible. We should have them sign like a contract. Will you be a fibromyalgia friend? Please sign here if you are okay with last minute cancels, if you would be willing to meet on Zoom. Maybe we'd have to do that same thing for dating. Last time I tried to date was like 800 years ago. So the idea of dating with fibromyalgia is a completely overwhelming concept in this day and age. We didn't even have apps like back then. We like met people in real life. It was crazy. It was weird. Then we talked on the phone. It was crazy. But I don't know how you would go about dating with fibromyalgia in this day and age. Would you just like put it on your profile so that like you're filtering out people that are not going to get it? I don't know. Any comments, or if anybody has any brilliant?
Yeah. We'll wait for that for a minute. I know I was not married when I got fibromyalgia, so oops, don't know if that changed the screen for anybody there. So yeah, it was hard. I actually I have a when Harry met Sally situation with my husband. We met
Oh,
years prior, and that's really dating myself for some of you. But go check the movie out. It's a good movie. But we were friends. We tried to date, and then we were just friends for years, and then we got back together again. But even with that history, when we started talking again, and I could see that we were starting to date and things were getting serious, it was like, ooh, when do I tell him? And I kept having to cancel. And at one point, he's like, if you don't want to go out, like just let me know. You don't have to tell me that, make up excuses or whatever. Because I was living at home at the time, because I was unable to work. And so, my mom would actually be like, "Oh, Sharon can't go out tonight." It sounds like I'm in high school again. So he's like, "What is up with that?" And so I told him, and he's like, "Oh." And he's like, "Well, why didn't you just tell me?" And I'm like, "Well, perhaps because I didn't know you'd take it this well. You're scared of doing that, but hopefully many of you will be surprised, by what you find." So Ginevra, you've shared a few here on the screen, it looks like.
oh yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
having fun. You guys are
Yeah.
writing great, wonderful comments.
Did we have somebody write in about what they do with the dating? Then I wanted to go back to a question. There's so many coming in, it's hard to keep up with them all, which is good. And if we don't get around to everybody's, this will give us some great content for some future episodes that we'll do. And we're for sure going to do the live again. If you guys like this, let us know. Is this helpful? What could make it more helpful? Drop that in the comment.
I like your idea, Beth. We do a fibromyalgia and single dating site, or even just like a chronic illness and dating site. Like there has to be something like that, right? There's like so many apps out there. I'm gonna look. Not that I'm interested in dating. I kind of am like, you know what? I got 2 cats. I'm good. That's the stage of life I'm in.
Here's another one. So, how do you tell prospective employer in the same way as dating? That's a tricky one as well.
It is a
Um,
tricky one. And a lot of jobs that you apply for, they have like a thing where they ask you if you have a disability. And it's theoretically because of the kind of DEI initiatives where they're trying to, make sure that everybody is having a fair chance to work. And they say this will not be held against you when in the hiring process. But like I kind of don't believe that. But I don't know. There's a little skeptical part of me that's like, I don't think you reveal that till like after you have the job. And then you
yeah.
kind of say like, hey, so I mean, I don't know. This is not like this may be terrible advice. I'm just thinking out loud.
And I know we have some resources out there, that we can share moving forward. This definitely is a whole show to talk about this
For
aspect with
sure.
somebody with a little more experience in that arena, and we'll do that in the future because this is a hot topic for both the dating and employment, how to handle that situation. Um, let's see. We've got a few people weighing in on that. Here's Timothy saying honesty is always best. Admitting things about health, the person may think you'll be dishonest about other areas. Yep,
Fair point.
it's a good point. And something, when I was first getting into a relationship, I was feeling sort of like this broken person, and that oh man, I have all these health problems. But the fact is, you don't know what's going to happen down the road. You could actually wind up being the healthier one in your relationships. Like anything can happen to anyone at any time. So I bear that in mind. Like I feel like I see too many people who feel like guilty or feel less than, or that you're a burden, and you're not. Like, this is just something you're dealing with, which certainly can be monumental and can be life-changing at times, but you are still you, and you're still worthy of love, and you still, deserve friendship and all the things that life has and engaging work, and you're able to offer those things. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do these things. And that's something that I also work with, people on in my coaching practice. So people have asked about that, and you can look more up on that at hwcsharon.com. I'm just reading a few comments here to see where we're at, see if we've gotten more comments on what we've been talking about. Let's see. Beth is sharing something. Oh, I'm sorry, Ginevra, if I popped
No, it's
one out
okay.
of there. Yeah, wait until you're hired and request the ADA form for your doctor to fill out. Let's see. We're getting the flow of this, how it works live.
Yeah. I like
Um,
this Sue's quote. Don't let your illness define you. I think that is a really good thing to keep in mind. Challenging. It can be challenging at times. And particularly when you start like stacking up chronic illnesses, if they like are coming in packs, it's like it can be really hard. And if you're actually most of your social connections are around that condition, I think that can also make it a little bit like you'd sort of just start to feel like that's the only aspect of you that is worth kind of talking about, and we kind of forget the like, oh yeah, but like I'm also really good at watercolors, or I really like doing this, or I've got a great eye for, collectibles, or just all that stuff that defines us as humans. Should not be illness, for sure.
mhm. Yeah. Appreciate everybody writing the comments in here, and the support that you're giving each other is fantastic. Let's see. That's cute. H. Odessa. I met my love at a grocery store where he works, and 10 years later, we ran into one another and traded emails. So there you go. You never know. Sometimes you
Oh,
just got to
yeah,
get
that
that.
does still happen. Yes,
Um,
certainly does.
yep. Um, let's see. Yeah, so we're just reading some of the comments here, but yeah, just wanted to chat a little bit about how relationships were going. Um, again, the Beyond Chaos is a good book. Dr. Mark Pellegrino has a book. I believe it's only available in print called The Fibromyalgia Supporter. That's also a really good book to take a look at. And any time you can pass along little bits of information to a loved one to learn more about fibromyalgia, that might be helpful so that they start to understand the pieces to the puzzle. And I think some of the ideas that we've seen in these chats here, that when we're joking around a little bit around the agreement form, so to speak, that you might be canceling on things, like doing some things in humor, I think is a terrific way to engage people, and just that way they know, because I think on the other side of things, right, we're always worried that somebody's canceling on us because they're not interested in being with us or whatever, and it's somebody else's sort of insecurities in that moment, or worry that you know you're canceling for any number of other reasons than other than I have fibro and I can't go out right now. So if you are upfront about that, it may be very helpful in knowing, like, look, there are gonna be times I'm going to cancel, and here's why, and I can't wait to do the next whatever with you. Or someone else, I apologize, I don't remember the name here. We've got so many scrolling in. Mention that they educate on this and then say, but please always invite me. I love the opportunity to be able to say no, and then be invited to the next thing. And hopefully I can go that time.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
So Andrea from Slovakia has an interesting question. It's not, related to relationships, but it's a little bit more the like parent-child relationship. So before I address this question, I wanted to address the other question, which was sort of like how you can help your kiddo understand if you have fibromyalgia. And that can be really hard unless you were smart enough to do what Sharon did and not tell people, not tell your kids about planned events until right before. I felt like when my son was growing up that I was constantly like disappointing him because I'd be like, "Hey, we're gonna do this," and I really wished that there was a different way I could have communicated to him about that. And I think this is where one of our friends actually made a book. What is that book called? It's like Ravyn's.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there's like a book. It's for kind of younger
Mhm.
kiddos. Um,
I'll look that up while you're talking.
yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but it's it's a really good book. But it's kind of for the younger population.
Yes,
So
it is, Raven's Doll, and it's
Ravyn's.
by our friend Melissa Swanson. Yep.
So then Andrea's question is, how do you help your child with FM if the adult child sees what this does to you over the years? Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough one. I really worry, right, that my son is going to develop fibromyalgia because there is a genetic predisposition. And it's hard to, I worry that like if he sees me when I'm not doing well, that it's gonna make him feel really depressed and discouraged down the road. And, if, for example, he already had a diagnosis of fibromyalgia, it would be really hard to navigate. Like, how do I try to both reassure and sort of inspire that things will get better? Gosh, in like 10 years, we are going to have better treatments. There's going to be less stigma. That's a really tricky thing to accomplish, particularly if you're not feeling great yourself. So I don't have a good answer to that other than what I do tell most parents that are coming to me saying, "Hey, my teen just got diagnosed with fibro," is I say, we are about 80 years behind where we need to be in the research. I'm not joking, but we're closing that. Things are changing so rapidly in the world of fibromyalgia science that I think in their lifetime, in the next 10, 15 years, we really are gonna have much better answers and much better treatments. So that's kind of how I try to keep hope going forward, along with doing the best I can, of course, to, like, take care of myself so that I can be an example and be an example of, like, saying no to things and, regulating my own spoons well and, managing comorbid conditions that I might also have. So, Sharon, do you have a
Yeah, and,
about that?
you're what you're ending on right there is perfect, that you have identified these strategies that allow you to live better with fibromyalgia. So teaching those to your child young is going to be so important. And Ginevra, you and I were just talking about this the other day, the thought process behind when we have fibromyalgia. um, Most of us, I mean, I don't know anyone. So drop me a comment if you might be the first person who's gonna say something different to this. But I don't know anybody with fibro who doesn't have something else beyond the fibromyalgia. So I feel like if we can learn to live as healthy as we can with the
You mean a health
fibromyalgia,
condition beyond the
like other
fibromyalgia?
health conditions, like the chronic overlapping pain conditions is
Or
what
like
I'm
IBS
really.
or migraines?
IBS, migraines, TMJ,
Yeah.
pelvic pain. There's usually a myriad of those things going on. And if this is the first time you are hearing this, please note that these things are very common with fibromyalgia. There's about 10 disorders that occur together. So not everything is fibromyalgia. And on the good news side of things, some of these things can be have actually maybe better treatments than the fibro does. And some of those things can be treated. And when you treat those things, it often has a positive impact on the fibromyalgia. So you want to be treating everything that's not fibro and seeing if that helps to bring the fibromyalgia back into a manageable place. So what you were saying, though, about teaching your child then the things that are working for you. And some of us, didn't get to have fibromyalgia till we're later in life. And I think one thing, one of my first jobs after I developed fibromyalgia, I worked for the Arthritis Foundation on juvenile arthritis. And I think when we can reach the kids when they're younger, they haven't set up all of those maybe bad habits that we as adults
Yeah, they have
have.
less bad habits to overcome.
They have less bad habits to overcome, and they might be more this can go either way. They might be more willing to take some, like, helpful strategies, and frankly, sometimes those young bodies of theirs respond even better than some of us, to, like, a dietary change and different things like that.
I have seen that as well, or things like myofascial release, like body work, even mental health care, because the young body I miss those days, responds more quickly to things, has a more robust, healing response. Um, and Sharon, I had another kind of thought about something we could answer, which can relate to sort of helping your kiddo. And that is really making sure that like mental health concerns are getting addressed. And there was a really interesting study recently that showed basically that people with chronic pain, their mental health needs were being completely underserved, at least in the US. And I feel like in the fibromyalgia population, that's probably fair. And I always, whenever I talk to a group of doctors, I always say depression does not cause fibromyalgia, but fibromyalgia does cause depression. Because when you feel like shit, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, beep, and you're fatigued and brain fog, it's really hard, and you can't do what you used to do. It's really hard to not become depressed. So what I personally have found a lot of benefit is making sure that I am like dialed into seeing a psychiatrist, seeing a psychologist. I've tried like so many different kinds of psychology, all sorts of different work, doing myofascial release, doing the exercise, doing the things that I know will keep me from dissolving into a puddle of depression, where then I'm super like I'm procrastinating and I don't want to do things. And then I just feel worse. And I mean, definitely laying on the couch all day will make my pain worse. But when I'm depressed, I'm like, ugh. That's all I can do. So I would say trying to remove some of the stigma. I mean, there's still a lot of stigma around mental health and even just like, oh, seeing a psychiatrist. But I'm like, F that. Like, just that is a really important piece of how you can help yourself with fibromyalgia. Because let's say you come into my office and I'm like, hey, I think this dietary intervention is going to help you. And then you go home and you're so depressed that you like don't go to the grocery store and you don't prepare food for yourself. How the heck are you going to like do that? So I have found sometimes the first thing that needs to be addressed are really mental health concerns, and just reminding yourself that depression, even if your doctor says it, because there's still some old dinosaurs out there that do, depression does not cause fibromyalgia, but fibromyalgia definitely causes depression.
Yeah, and even anxiety. And I do find in my work, especially as a health coach, a lot of people do struggle with going to see someone in behavioral health, a psychologist or a social worker, and that can often be a significant missing piece to treatment, um, because that depression, that anxiety that we're constantly under, then just adds more cortisol to our body, does other changes to our neurochemicals. And so without treating that piece, it has an impact physically. I just can't wait. I think the day will come in my lifetime where we start saying, physical and mental health is the same thing. It's one thing, because they're really not separate, and there shouldn't be there shouldn't be a stigma around it, but we recognize that there is. Ginevra, I'm glad that you brought that up, and thank you for the question in the chat box about
Yeah,
that
there was
as
a
well.
couple folks that had that question, and I really appreciate you guys bringing it up. Along with Beth mentions here that helping you just grieve through the loss of your old self. Sometimes people are grieving the loss of a job they can no longer do. That is real, and sometimes getting help to do that really makes a huge difference in our quality of life.
Yeah, just talking with somebody who understands and has empathy for that can let you know, like, what you're feeling is real and it's valid and it's having this effect on you. Just hearing those words from somebody can be really powerful. And they often can have strategies to help you maybe move through that process with a little more grace, a little more ease to get you through. Just back looking at some of the, apps. Get somebody saying helpful to grieve losses. So let's see.
Maybe we have time for like one more kind of
Yeah.
comment, question, or mini topic. We're just scrolling through to make sure that we did not miss anybody's comment. Wow, as I scroll through, I'm just so impressed of the wide geography of where people are coming from. It's really exciting to see people from all over the world. I think we can always understand each other. We have this universal language of fibromyalgia, with the exception of, I'm not sure that Spoonies translates. Funny little story. I was trying to like translate some of our scripts, and I will say that in Spanish, it just translated to calling all the spoons. What I meant was like Spoonies, and in each language, it was like, so I think people will assume I'm just crazy about spoons, but so some things maybe don't translate, but you can always go to this, I think it's the spoontheory.com, and it might make a little more sense why I'm talking about spoons in various languages.
Yeah, and we'll drop that in the comment. Plus, we're going to do a show on it, another little spin on that to explain it a little bit more, because it might be a helpful tool in managing relationships. It can be helpful.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
just a shorthand, you know what I mean? Rather than like explaining to your kid again or to your spouse, just be like, honey, I don't have the spoons. Or for example, yesterday, my kiddo wanted to go do 2 things outside of the house. And I said, I only have the spoons for one thing. Which of those do you want to do? And my kiddo was like, all right, that one. Like he totally gets it. He understands. And yeah, that I found that helpful. I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. I can just explain like shorthand between family members or even between friends. Maybe that can be a way people can. It doesn't
And
have
I
to be
love
spoons, though. It can be
I
whatever you want.
I love that example too, because I think by you giving your son the choice of what to do with the spoons, like, that's giving him a little bit of control in a situation that doesn't feel real controllable for either one of you, that you have this illness. So, I think having that discussion with whatever it is, it's a spouse or your child or whatever, like, well, I have spoons for one thing today. What are we going to do? Like, make the decision together. And that's a way you can bond together over it and be like a partner working to manage this illness. That's a part of your relationship. It's not just yours, it's a part of the relationship. And working on it together can hopefully make it less difficult for both of you, is the hope.
Oh, here's some other resources. How many marbles do you have? And
Ooh.
then the Ravens doll for kids. Why does mommy hurt by Elizabeth Christie? These are great resources. I think these are probably more for like the younger kids. I wonder about anybody have any good ideas or resources for like the teens that you're trying to communicate with? They seem to be, they're a bit trickier in case you didn't notice that. They're a little more complicated. You can't read them bedtime stories so much.
And I just wanted to mention, yeah, we're not going to be able to get to all of this, but we're going to comb through these comments after this is over, and we'll address more of this. Especially, I like a big common denominator in these is food. People are finding help by either not eating sugar, by not eating gluten, and again, if you're not seeing some of this, I don't think any of us is saying like you need to go off of that and you're fine. That's not the point of that. It's just that it can be a very helpful strategy in minimizing some of the symptoms. So, and I know Ginevra, you wrote a whole book on that, the Fibro Food Formula. So we
I'm
can
shipping it for free if you sign up for my email newsletter at drginevra.com.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you say that one more time? I feel like it was a little fast. Where do
Oh,
they
yeah.
get it
Well, why
again?
don't I put it in a comment here?
Okay, perfect. So yeah, you can get the Fibro Food Formula and learn a little bit more about uh, the impact of fibro in foods. I think you even have some recipes, don't you?
I
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And I will say, I just want to preface it with not everybody needs to make dietary changes. It's just one of the options, I think, as we look at the treatment menu of things that can help with fibro. But yeah,
With everything that we're going to talk about on the show today and moving forward, we'd like it to be approached as like a menu. This is like a menu of ideas, and you choose what's right for you. We know too that financially, it stinks. Like, that's to put it mildly, that a lot of things that work well for fibro are not covered. And that's something that we'd like, and I have advocated for over the years, to get treatments covered that are
this is
not.
like the mission of my next decade. It's like, I'm going to get these freaking things covered. Myofascial release, here we come. But I
Mhm.
digress. Sorry, that's just my mission. I'm fine.
And we have stuff about weather in here, how the weather impacts symptoms. And yeah, thank you for all of this. Definitely more than we could ever do. And we've already been on for almost an hour. This is amazing. This has been great to hear from all of you and what's on your mind. Um, do you have a fibromyalgia body chart? I need to show one to my 15-year-old son. I don't know if we have one of those somewhere.
Oh, that's a good question. There is one. If you go to drginevra.com, I believe, I think it's on there. I put their links to some of the forms I used in my office. And I think there's a body chart. You can also just Google, I think it's like body diagram for chronic pain. Basically, you just need front and back of human body outline. But it can be useful actually to a visual way to explain your symptoms. I think would be a really useful thing to share with your kids for sure.
I like this comment.
Yeah, budget or battery. Yes, budget. That's true. I like that. Yes.
Yeah.
And I absolutely want to write another book. I actually want to write an updated fibro manual that includes all kind of the new information. So I'm just hoping my publisher will decide to do that. So not quite
And
up to me.
what we really want, Ginevra, and so I'm putting this call to action out to all of you watching. We really need Ginevra's book to go on Audible. And apparently, if you watch one of our other episodes, Ginevra, you said that we apparently need to reach out to your publisher and
Yeah, I feel like I want to sign, I don't know, sounds ridiculous, but make a petition or something. We, the undersigned with fibromyalgia, would really like this book to be on Audible along with X, Y, and Z. Maybe there's some other books that could be helpful, because I do get a lot of people giving me the feedback that they struggle with reading and retention, and that absolutely is part of fibromyalgia and kind of the brain fog. And I think Sharon kind of introduced me to the fact that like Audible, it hits a different part of your brain. You can do it in a different way. For some people, it seems to stick more. So yeah, I need to like figure out how to harness,
So if you're sitting there going, oh man, that's why I can't read, because I was shocked over time to realize myself and then to start hearing from people, I can't read like I used to. I sit there and read and I have to reread over and over the same sentence. I'm like, yeah, I do too. But when I listen to a book, I can, most of the time, I mean, granted, you have moments when you're really tired or whatever. Most of the time I can listen to it straight through and I retain it. But yeah, not so much with the reading all of the time. So just a little tip out there. If you're having a hard time reading, it could be related to the fibro brain or whatever. Dry eyes with fibro also factors into all of that. So, but we really appreciate all of you being here. I don't know, Ginevra, did you have any last minute things beyond before I say goodbye? I just really want to thank you guys for watching the show, sending you guys some fibro love.
Fibro love.
And
I just wanted to say that some of these comments or questions that are a bit more on the medical side, like around medications and such, I will try to address those in future episodes. I'm trying to still kind of have the scientific medical part and talk about research studies, but also talk about the reality of living with fibromyalgia. So I'm keeping a note and I will try to get to those, but then you're forced to watch every episode because you never know when I'm going to answer it. So it's my secret, secret plot. But the other thing I wanted to say is as a reminder, we're not giving out medical advice. We're not telling you anything that you should do in your life. We're just, as Sharon said, trying to give some options that maybe you've not thought of, or maybe things that you could talk about with your healthcare providers.
yeah. And, if the show's helping you, please subscribe, hit the bell, if you hit the bell, the little bell icon, then you'll be notified whenever we drop new content, so you won't miss anything. But by you doing those things, we get larger views on YouTube. And what we're really trying to do with the show is not only help all of you, we want to help a lot more people. And we feel like if this becomes more commonplace in the world where people hear about fibro, hear about the challenges people with fibro face, a lot of these issues we're talking about today will improve. So by you doing those things, you're going to help us make a difference in the world. Like we're on a mission. We are going to change this.
We are two middle-aged women on a mission, first to conquer YouTube and then somehow use that to help the fibromyalgia world, like the community, like not just US, like broad. Sharon and I have some big things planned, so stay tuned.
Thanks for being here.